Hey everybody, it's me, Gruey, and today I'm going to help you guys with your work for 4/13 or April the 13th. Today you all are reading an article called How Science and Genetics Are Reshaping the Race Debate of the 21st Century. This article is by Vivian Chu, and so our article begins on page 1. This article is from April 17th, 2017. So it's a fairly recent article. It's only 3 years old. So let's begin. We're on page 1. We're in the intro. It says, Donald Trump's election as the 45th president of the United States has been marked by the brewing storms of racial conflicts. A rise in racial incidents ensued in the immediate aftermath of Trump's victory in November 2016. Since the beginning of 2017, over 100 bomb threats have been made against Jewish community centers and schools. Trump's travel ban, signed in late January 2017, initially affected about 90,000 people from 7 Middle Eastern countries. 87,000 of those banned were Muslims. Minorities such as African Muslims and Black Americans have expressed fears over racial relations under Trump. Undeniably, the topic of race and racism has gripped America and the world throughout. Over the last decade, there have been hopes that the U.S. has become a post-racial society, free of racial prejudice and discrimination. However, the most recent months indicate the contrary. Race remains as an incendiary issue. Race and racism are not new issues, but in today's 21st century Trump era, discussions about race are distinct from those of the past in that they possess an entirely new dimension, that of genetics and DNA. We're now in the new heading, Race in the New Era of Human Genetics Research. We're now at the top of page 2. In 2003, scientists completed the Human Genome Project, making it finally possible to examine human ancestry with genetics. Scientists have since tackled topics such as human migrations out of Africa and around the world, and it's not just scientists who are excited about human genetics. Widely affordable at-home ancestry test kits are now readily available from companies like 23andMe, Family Tree DNA, and Ancestry. For $99, around the price of a romantic dinner or a pair of Nikes, a customer can receive an analysis from 23andMe indicating that they are, for instance, 18% Native American, 65.1% European, and 6.2% African. The soaring popularity of ancestry testing bespeaks a widespread perception that we can use tests to dissect, delineate, and define our ancestral composition. Indeed, social media is teeming with blog posts and even live stream videos from excited customers bursting to broadcast their test results and their reactions. Ancestry test kits are the new it item, and with their success is the tacit admission of our belief that our DNA can sort us into categories like the 5 races: African, European, Asian, Oceania, and Native American. We'll see that in figure 1A, which is at the top of page 3. So figure 1A, you have the popular conception of genetics and 5 races. They've broken them up into the 5 races they mentioned at the bottom of page 2, which again is African, European, Asian, Oceania, and Native American. The popular conception is that most races you're not going to see too huge distinction between them, but within themselves, but you'll see huge distinctions between them. Figure 1B is actual genetic variation. And so as you can see in figure 1B, you've actually got some that match up with circles outside of their own. So let's see what it says for figure 1, right? Figure 1 is described as saying race cannot be biologically defined due to genetic variation among human individuals and populations. That's for A, the old concept of 5 races: African, Asian, European, Native American, and Oceanian. According to this view, seen in figure A, variation between the races is large, and thus each race is a separate category. Additionally, individual races are thought to have a relatively uniform genetic identity. In figure B, it's the actual genetic variation in humans. human populations do roughly cluster into geographical regions. However, variations between different regions is small, thus blurring the lines between populations. Furthermore, variation within a single region is large. There is no uniform identity. We're now in the new heading on page 4. It says, New findings in genetics tear down old ideas about race. Estimating our ancestral composition down to 0.1% seems to suggest that there are exact categorical divisions between human populations. But reality is far less simple. Compared to the general public's enthusiasm for ancestry testing, the reaction from scientists has been considerably more lukewarm. Research indicates that the concept of 5 races does, to an extent, describe the way human populations are distributed among the continents. But the lines between races are much more blurred than ancestry testing companies would have us believe, as seen in Figure 1b. A landmark 2002 study by Stanford scientists examined the question of human diversity by looking at the distribution across 7 major geographical regions of 4,000 alleles. Alleles are the different flavors of a gene. For instance, all humans have the same genes that code for hair. The different alleles are why hair comes in all types of colors and textures. In the Stanford study, over 92% of alleles were found in 2 or more regions, and almost half of the alleles studied, and over half of the alleles studied were present in all 7 major geographical regions. The observation that the vast majority of the alleles were shared over multiple regions or even throughout the entire world points to the fundamental similarity of all people around the world, an idea that has been supported by many other studies. Figure 1b. If separate racial or ethnic groups actually existed, we would expect to find trademark alleles and other genetic features that are characteristic of a single group but not present in any others. However, the 2002 Stanford study found that only 7.4% of over 4,000 alleles were specific to one geographical region. Furthermore, even when region-specific alleles did appear, they only occurred in about 1% of the people from that region, hardly enough to be any kind of trademark. Thus, there is no evidence that the groups we commonly call races have distinct, unifying genetic identities. In fact, there is ample variation within races, as seen in Figure 1b. Ultimately, there is so much ambiguity between the races and so much variation within them that the 2 people of European descent may be more genetically similar to an Asian person than they are to each other. If you look at the Figure 2, you see 2 men of European descent and 1 man of Asian descent. They've broken it down to the different variations that you saw in all the men's parents, and then you see their variation as well, and you get to see some similarities between them. Figure 2 says, case study of genetic variation between 3 scientists. Left, schematization of the genetic variation between Doctors James Watson, Craig Ventnor, and Kim Song-jin. Colored bars represent genes. Different colors represent different alleles, i.e. versions of genes. Some alleles are shared by all 3 of the men, represented by the dark brown allele that is shared by every person in this image. Besides the universal dark brown allele, Watson and Ventnor share 1 other allele, bright blue. However, both share 2 alleles with Kim. Watson shares red and orange with Kim, Ventnor shares green and magenta. In addition to the universal allele. Right. There is more similarity between the Kim and Watson and Kim and Ventnor than there is between Watson and Ventnor. We're now in the new heading, Does Race Still Mean Something? And we're towards the bottom of page 5. The divisions between races are doubtlessly blurred, but does this necessarily mean that race is a myth, a mere social construct and biologically meaningless? As with other race-related questions, the answer is multidimensional and may depend on whom you ask. In the biological and social sciences, the consensus is clear. Race is a social construct, not a biological attribute. Today, scientists prefer to use the term ancestry to describe human diversity, as seen in Figure 3. Ancestry reflects the fact that human variations do have a connection to the geographical origins of our ancestors. With enough information about a person's DNA, scientists can make a reasonable guess about their ancestry. However, Unlike the term race, it focuses on understanding how a person's history unfolded, not how they fit into one category and not another. In a clinical setting, for instance, scientists would say that diseases such as sickle cell anemia and cystic fibrosis are common in those of sub-Saharan Africa or Northern Europe descent, respectively, rather than in those who are black or white. We now get to see figure 3. For figure 3, we have A and B again. So let's see what it says. It says it is the race versus ancestry picture. For figure 3A, we have the classification of people into different races is typically based on observable physical features, with skin color being the most prominently used characteristic. Racial classifications also draw upon non-biological characteristics such as culture, language, history, religion, and socioeconomic status. Thus, race is a term that lacks clear definition. B. In contrast to race, ancestry emphasizes the geographical origins of one's ancestors, including parents, grandparents, and beyond. Unlike race, the concept of ancestry does not focus on the static categorization of humans into groups, but rather on the process by which a person's history is unfolded. We're now on page 6. However, even if scientists agree that race is at most a social construct, any cursory search of the internet reveals that the broader public is not convinced of this. After all, if an Asian person looks so different from a European, how could they not be from distinct groups? Even if most scientists reject the concept of race as a biological concept, race exists undeniably as a social and political concept. The popular classifications of race are based chiefly on skin color, with other relevant features including height, eye, and hair. Though these physical differences may appear on a superficial level to be very dramatic, they are determined by only a minute portion of the genome. We as a species have been estimated to share 99.9% of our DNA with each other. The few differences that do exist reflect differences in environment and external factors, not core biology. Importantly, the evolution of skin color occurred independently and did not influence other traits such as mental abilities and behavior. In fact, science has yet to find evidence that there are genetic differences in intelligence between populations. Ultimately, while there certainly are some biological differences between different populations, these differences are few and superficial. The traits that we do share are far more profound. So ladies and gentlemen, if you are reading along with me, you get to find out that you only need to read up to page 6 of this article. If you want, you can finish reading pages 7 and 8 on your own, but for your classwork, you only need to read up to page 6. So, what do you think? How has this article helped support Coates' idea that race is just a social construct?